Hi there, I'm Danny Flexen and welcome to the latest edition of SecondsOut ReFLEXions. We're here every Monday, 4:30 PM to look back on the boxing action of the weekend just gone. And this weekend, the biggest fight probably was one that I've already reviewed. You can see on the channel from yesterday, but we're going to talk a bit more about the consequences and permutations after the result as Terence Crawford retained his WBO welterweight title with a fourth round stoppage of Kell Brook. You can watch the the fight review if you want to hear a bit more about it. But basically, Brook started off pretty well, sharply behind his jab, but Crawford switched to southpaw from the third round. Started to get Brook's measure, timed him coming in a bit more, and then in the fourth round delivered just an incredible finish. I thought, I say never, I've only been watching it since yesterday, but I certainly haven't got tired of watching it yet. It's the way he changes his footwork and steps round to an angle as they're both pouring with their respective jabs, Crawford from the southpaw stance and Brook from orthodox. He just suddenly turns on an angle and hits Brook with a short, very short right hook that has a devastating effect. And Brook got knocked into the ropes. It got classed as a knockdown quite rightly, I thought. And then upon the resumption, Crawford zeroed in and got Brook out of there. We don't know what's going to happen next. We talked a lot about it. I talked a lot about it yesterday in terms of whether Brook will retire. Crawford spoke after about wanting that Manny Pacquiao fight. And obviously we'd all like to see him fight Errol Spence. What I found as interesting, if not more so, was the comments attributed to Top Rank promoter who look after Crawford at the moment, Bob ARUM, in The Athletic, a lot of which was circulated on social media after the fight. And the main kind of theory behind it is that Crawford's contract runs out next year, apparently. And judging by some of ARUM's comments, it seems like it's not necessarily a happy marriage at present. So we could be seeing a split, which Steve Kim, a respected US writer, pointed out may be beneficial to both parties in that Top Rank could invest a lot of the money. They've been paying Crawford between $3.5 and $4 million per fight, including for the Brook fight on Saturday. They can invest that in some of their younger talent and, speculate to accumulate, if you like. Whereas Crawford, by moving either as a free agent or to Premier Boxing Champions, may finally be able to get some of those career-defining fights that he apparently craves against the likes of Errol Spence, and Manny Pacquiao, Keith Thurman, Sean Porter, and so on, because they're all affiliated with PBC. And it's been very hard for Top Rank to match Crawford thus far with the PBC fighters. But yeah, some of the comments attributed to ARUM basically talking about how much money he's lost over Crawford's. I think he said if he recouped all the money he'd lost for Crawford's last 3 fights, he could buy a mansion in Beverly Hills or something along those lines. I'm not a real estate expert, but I'm assuming that's quite a hefty chunk of change. And he also said Crawford may be the greatest fighter in the world right now, but I'm not going to go bankrupt promoting him. So, and he also made some comments comparing him to some other fighters, including Teofimo Lopez, I believe, just basically inferring or implying that Crawford's not doing enough to promote himself. And a lot of people on social media hit back on that and said, well, surely it's the promoter's job to promote and the fighter's job to fight. And I think there's kind of a grey area as well. I think ARUM's right in a sense that certain other fighters make it an easier job for him to promote them. They raise their profile across social media. They're very vocal. They call people out. They appear on various other kind of marketing avenues, whether that be on TV or on social media, advertisements, sponsorships, and so on. And it makes it an easier task for a promoter to get them out there to make the big fights and to recoup the money they invest in them. The flip side of that is that surely there's more that could have been done, not just by Top Rank, but also just in general circumstance for Crawford. It's not his fault, even if he had the highest profile out of any boxer in the world today, he still wouldn't necessarily be getting those fights with his PBC rivals because of the split between promoters and broadcasters, because PBC are affiliated with Fox and with Showtime, Top Rank with ESPN. So it'd be very difficult to make those fights, even if he had this, extrovert personality, even if he was all over billboards and TV shows and late night talk shows or whatever it is we're talking about here. So I think it'd be very difficult either way. Then you've got, could Top Rank have done more? Could they have matched him a bit better over the last year or two? Bob ARUM's talking about losing money on the fights. Could they have got more marketable opponents for Crawford outside of that PBC selection? I think they probably could. the Kell Brook fight could have been made certainly a year or two ago, and it might have been a better fight then as well. Brook might have still had more left than he's got now. And he gave a good account of himself for as long as it lasted on Saturday. It's not a knock on him. But there were other fights that could be made, and Crawford was kind of keeping busy against guys like Mean Machine. And again, no disrespect to him. He's a good fighter, but not a massive name. That more could have been done, I think. And more could have been done from Top Rank side to push Crawford out there as well. There seems to have been a lot kind of invested in certain other fighters under their banner at the moment, Lopez being one of them. Obviously, Lomachenko takes up a lot of attention, and rightly so. So there's fault on both sides here. And I think Steve Kim's right in that it could be better for both parties if they just split now. Crawford can finally nail down those fights he's been seeking for a while. ARUM can focus more on other fighters that perhaps he feels easier to promote and to market. And maybe everyone ends up happy. Crawford hasn't really got the time to waste. He looked as fresh as ever on Saturday night. But he is getting on in age. He's, 33 now, I think? And he's not going to have a million years left. You get to that sort of age, fighters can just grow old in one fight. And we don't want to see that happen against someone like a Spence. It's a huge fight. Everyone's been clamouring for it in boxing hardcore for a long time. We don't want to see that ruined because it was left too long, like Pacquiao Mayweather's the most famous example. We want to see it happen next if possible, but if not, next year at the very latest. So fingers crossed, Crawford does come out of that contract. I mean, I think it might be better for both parties if he was released from the contract now, if they came to some sort of mutual agreement. Instead of waiting till the contract reportedly expires, I think October next year. But that means another fight for Crawford under the Top Rank banner, probably an underwhelming opponent from a profile standpoint, and another 6 months to a year wasted. Whereas if they could come to some sort of mutually beneficial agreement, Top Rank could invest heavily in areas they want to prioritise. Crawford could get his release now, fight one of the PBC fighters, not Spence straight away, I wouldn't think, but a Sean Porter perhaps, or a Keith Thurman. And if he wins that, then he gets, hopefully, the winner of Errol Spence against Danny Garcia, which is an incredibly intriguing contest that takes place soon. Intriguing, at least partly, because we haven't seen Spence since that horrific car crash. He says he's 100%, but we won't know, and he probably won't know until he actually gets in the ring. And with someone like Danny Garcia, a very high-level opponent, you have to take your hat off to Spence and say fair play for taking on someone so challenging, not knowing, not 100% anyway, just how good you are, if you're back to your best or not. So that's a really intriguing fight. But if Spence does come through that and Crawford leaves Top Rank amicably and fights a warm-up, not even a warm-up fight, but a good top-level welterweight, but someone that kind of gets him ready for Spence, if you like, because I don't want to disrespect anyone. If he were to fight Thurman next, it'd still be the best fighter he's fought at welterweight and maybe at all in his career. But I'd like to see that, and then the winner of that goes on to fight the winner of Spence Garcia. And then we get a big kind of mega fight, if PBC have built it up even better by then, between Crawford and Spence towards the middle to end of next year. And crowds will probably be allowed back, hopefully, on a widespread scale by then as well. It would all seem to work out for the best. So that's what I'd like to see, but I don't know if it's actually going to happen. Top Rank might dig their heels in. They won't want to strengthen a competitor, so they might want to keep Crawford on board. Crawford might want to say, look, you've guaranteed you'll pay me $4 million or whatever it is per fight. I'm going to take that last fight of my contract because I want that $4 million against whatever opposition you bring up. So we shall see. Let me know, obviously, in the comments below what you'd like to see Crawford and Top Rank do next in this situation. Who you kind of sympathise more with, if either party. It'd be good to know. Just a quick roundup of the other weekend's action before I go. We saw the historic Matchroom female triple header on Saturday night at Wembley Arena. Really important from a symbolic perspective, in that it shows young girls out there that being a top level boxer could be a realistic career ambition for a woman in 2020. So that's good. In terms of the actual in-ring action, fair play to Katie Taylor and Terry Harper, who are both dominant in different ways. All I would say is undemanding opposition, one-sided fights, all three. The most competitive fights, or the most competitive fight, was still on the undercard, and it was a male fight, Jack Cullen against John Doherty. So, no disrespect to them. I think it's very important, as I say, from a symbolic perspective. I think Katie Taylor was dazzling at times. I think Terry Harper was very dominant. They've done themselves no disservice in those fights. But we all want to see them. If female boxing is going to really achieve true parity with the men's game, or even approach it in terms of pay and in terms of interest and viewership, then I think we need to see real kind of high-profile competitive fights in the female division. And we certainly don't always see that in the men's side of the sport, I should point that out. But the ones that attract the most attention are generally the ones most high-profile and the ones perceived to be, at least on paper, competitive. But yeah, it was an enjoyable show nonetheless. And we also saw Denzel Bentley become the new British middleweight champion, beating Mark Heffron in 4 rounds of their rematch, this time with a vacant Lonsdale belt on the line. Caused a horrible eye injury to Heffron early on, and eventually he was pulled out by the corner, which you could completely understand. He was struggling to see the punches coming by that point. But in the brief time it lasted, Bentley had proved that he was the better man on the night, certainly. The eye did have a huge impact, there's no doubt about it, but Bentley boxed very well. Wasn't as reactive as he was in the first fight, a bit more on the front foot, seemed to anticipate what Heffron was going to do, countered effectively, and just seemed to have the better ring IQ in the short time it lasted. So congratulations to him, long-time friend of the channel, and we hope his reign goes from strength to strength, although Felix Cash, another friend of the channel, will have something to say about that. The Commonwealth champion is next in line, and he spoke to us just before Heffron against Bentley, and he feels 100% confident that he has the beating of both men. So it'll be interesting to see how soon that happens in the new year. Anything you want to comment on from any of the 3 shows? Obviously, I'll focus mostly on the Crawford top rank situation. Let me know in the comments below. I'll be back next week for the next ReFLEXions, Monday 4:30, but I'll also be back this Thursday for FlexPectations. Looking ahead to, amongst other things, the Matchroom fight night on Saturday, headlined by Conor Benn against Sebastian Formella. Thanks very much for your time, and I'll see you all soon. Cheers.